Hey guys, so I thought I would love to do a video on the decks that I tend to gravitate towards more for the darker half of the year. Now, I could have just done a video on my spooky decks, I guess, but I really kind of wanted to go more into the whole darker half of the year and the decks that I tend to gravitate towards. I just felt like that was really kind of more the point that I wanted to get across. Now, these are not even necessarily decks for shadow work, they're not even necessarily darker decks. They are just decks that I tend to work with in the colder months of the year, or anything that kind of comes with that darker half of the year as we go inward and we are trapped inside, or we're trying to navigate anything that might come up around this time of the year. It's just, it kind of falls under all of that. So, the first deck that I thought I would share is the Marilyn Tarot. I'm gonna see more zoomed in here because it looks like it's just not what I need. And let's see, can we go any further? Nope, my camera is not awesome like that. All right, well, we'll just work with what we got here because this isn't, I guess it's not too bad, but thanks for bearing with me. So, this deck and I have a very interesting and complicated relationship in the sense that I completely refused to work with it for the longest time, and it literally stalked me. And I know it sounds weird when I'm talking about an inanimate object, but I mean that in the sense that I kept getting people offering to send it to me for no cost, just looking to get rid of it and move it on to another home. And this was several people had contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm looking to get rid of this and I wanted to pass it on to you." And I was like, "No, no, you know." And then after like the third or fourth time of that occurring, I'm not exaggerating, I basically was like, all right, I will take it. And I ended up really, really loving this deck. But the biggest reason why I love this deck is the fact that it goes so deep, and it's really, really great for spiritual readings or shadow readings, honestly. I can come to it with the deeper questions and I get deeper answers. And that is something that to me has always left me with, I love this one. I've always walked away from the readings with this deck in a very thought-provoking and profound mood. So it does not disappoint. It does not. This deck is incredible. To see about potentially piling my decks up over here as I go through them. The next one that again is another one that I actually was not sure how I would feel about it. And then it ended up coming into my life in a very random way is the Tarot of the Crone. Now, I do think that this one's out of print. There's also a cat rare on it, always, always in my life, and never without. I do think that this one is out of print. I know within the last few months, I thought I had read that she was doing another small print run, but I'm not sure what ended up happening with that, so I apologize. But yes, this is the Tarot of the Crone. This is by the same artist and creator who did the Dark Goddess Tarot, which I also adore. The Dark Goddess Tarot you can actually get mass market now, so it's a lot easier to get a hold of than this one. But this deck really kind of reaches into that cronehood or darker half of life, and it is another one that is very thought-provoking. And I used this, the first reading I did with this deck was a new moon reading that ended up actually invoking a ton of shadows. So, but it kind of guides you through it in a, I didn't find it particularly harsh way. I found it a very healing, straightforward but healing way. So this one was really an eye-opener for me, and it's definitely one that I'm going to be working with even more so as we are in this part of the year, and also as I coincidentally am kind of heading in the direction of this phase of life with having a hysterectomy in a matter of a day before, um, as at the time I'm filming this. So I feel like I'm probably going to gravitate towards this deck a lot for those types of readings and that kind of thing as well. But it is a very rewarding deck to work with, I guess I could say. This is a longtime favorite of mine. I've actually been working with it the last week or so. Again, this is the Dark Days Tarot. I adore this deck. The creator has actually just come out with another deck called the Mother Tarot, which I do not have yet, but I hope to pick up when I can. But I love this one. Plus, you know, when we're talking about the darker half of the year, you got to talk about the Dark Days Tarot if you have it. I mean, it just makes sense. I've got reversal. But this one, I do wish that there was a little bit more in the guidebook, if I'm being completely honest. But the amount of connection and the way that this deck speaks to me really makes up for that, in my opinion. And I got this. I ended up getting this deck in November, a couple of years back now. So I've had it for a few years, and it really kind of helped me go through that winter. So I think that I also just kind of associate it with that experience. But it is really a wonderful deck for this time of the year, and a wonderful deck for like any time of the year. But as with all of these that I'm going to share, I'm just really kind of sharing also my personal experiences with how how I've worked with them and how they've spoken to me, really more correlating with the year. The next one is the Black Tarot. This is a very interesting deck. It is abstract in a way, but it also does have figures, and it is just kind of a trip, really. But this is more my this is more my, like, I don't like the Deviant Moon. It creeps me out, but strangely this one doesn't deck. If that makes any sense. For those of you who have the Deviant Moon, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you've seen that deck, it's bizarre, but I've heard a lot of wonderful things about it. It just hasn't spoke to me. Oh, we're backwards. But this one definitely has. And as you can see, it's got quite the artwork, and it's definitely very, I mean, quite literally shadowy, but it's also just kind of to me, it feels like exploring my subconscious. This is honestly what this deck feels like. It feels like I'm exploring the darker half of the dream world, or my navigating my shadows in a way that I can't necessarily do in my waking hours unless I'm speaking through this deck. I hope that makes sense, but that is pretty much my connection to this deck. It is a very, I don't know if I have proper words, but I do highly recommend this one. I am throwing cards. Of course, I again highly recommend all the decks that I'm showing tonight. Otherwise, I wouldn't be showing them, I guess. But yeah. So that is the Black Tarot. Oops. Tuck boxes are still kind of a challenge. No matter what, they are always a challenge. Put that one there. And don't bump the camera. So the next one is honestly a leap away from the previous ones that I've been showing. But I actually did not have this deck last year when I went through the darker half of the year. And I do have it this year, and I intend on working with it a lot over the winter. This is the Gentle Tarot. I actually got this in the summer. But any deck that kind of speaks to the natural world and how to utilize that to heal yourself is something that I'm going to gravitate towards. And so I did find that this one was something that really spoke to me. Oh, sweet, sweet baby. I love crows and ravens. I love this wands. I mean, she's just like, try me. The guidebook in this is phenomenal. It really is. Um, and I plan on using this a lot if, excuse me, if I'm finding that I'm really struggling to love myself, or that I'm struggling with depression or anxiety or pain, or navigating some of the things that I hope to really navigate as I go through this darker half of the year, and that I try to challenge myself to continue to work on the things that I need to work on. Um, and I felt like that this was a really good partner for that. So I, again, have not worked with this one in the darker half of the year yet, but to me, it's definitely one that I plan on working with. This box is a little bit tricky. Oh, throwing stuff. Again, throwing stuff. The camera, all that stuff. Alright, so the next one is the Dreamkeeper's Tarot. This is the mass market edition. I was interested in the deck for quite some time, and I actually didn't want to pick up the indie edition because I wasn't sure how I would feel about it. And then when it came out last January, it actually came out, I think, like the day before my birthday. So I ended up getting it as a birthday present. And I worked with it in the really cold months of the year. And I actually really ended up liking this deck. And by the way, when I mean really cold months of the year, I live in Minnesota. So January, my birth month, and February are just frigid. So that's a really, really fun time of the year to have your birthday. But yeah, I love the dreamlike state of this deck. And I love that it does kind of have, I don't want to say coldness in a distant or removed way, but there is sort of a chill to this deck that I can't quite explain. It's a little bit hard to articulate, but to me, that's how it speaks to me. And the readings I got weren't, cold or distant in that sense. It's just that it seemed to, I don't know quite how to articulate it, but if you have this deck, I think you might know what I'm talking about. But the dreamlike state of this deck is just, again, it's another one that kind of speaks to the subconscious, but more the lighter side dream-like state of the subconscious, I suppose I could say. I found it spoke to me quite well, and the guidebook is really, really thought out. The artist, I think her name is Liz Houston, if I'm not mistaken, she really kind of breaks down every little piece of why she included what she did in this artwork, and that's something that I really, really enjoy hearing about when it comes to reading guidebooks with decks. I love seeing artists' interpretations, their choices, why they chose what they chose, and all of that. So this is one that I just definitely associate with the darker half of the year. Switch this out because this box is a behemoth. So the next one is the Goliath Tarot, and I've had this for almost a year now, or I think over a year at this point. And again, this is another one where the natural world is ever present in this deck. The guidebook is incredible. Very, very incredible. This was the user's way to do this. And his artwork is so detailed and phenomenal. Wow. Okay. Um, I really adore him. I follow him on Instagram. He was actually kind and gifted me this deck. He's a joy to talk to. So I first of all, the amount of love and dedication and depth that he put into this guidebook is, I mean, I don't think I have words. But the other reason why I enjoy working with this deck in the darker half of the year is that it definitely speaks to the deeper sides of me, and those sides that connect with the natural world, and those sides that honor those the cycles that we go through and the cycles that nature goes through alongside us. There are many, many other things that I get from this deck, truthfully, but this is something that really kind of correlates to why I wanted to share it. But it is one of my favorites. I really love this one quite a bit. To try and get that back in there, and it's kind of tricky. Go over. Or we could just use both hands. See, that's the fun thing. You guys get to watch me, like, fiddle around with things. Be an all-around klutzy human being, so glimpse into the actual real Dana. She's a klutz. She's a very big klutz. There we go. Of course, honestly, glimpse into the real Dana. This is the real Dana. You get the real Dana all the time. So now we're going to go into Oracle decks, and the first one is actually kind of new to my collection. This was gifted to me by a friend, I think just a couple of weeks ago, and it was definitely a, you're going through a rough time and I'm going to cheer you up situation, but I'm really grateful to it. When this came out last year, I wanted to pick it up. I never did. It just didn't happen, and I really like this deck a lot. Again, this is another one where the guidebook is just awesome, but I did not want to stop working with this when I used it last week. I just wanted to keep going because I'm going to move those boxes. It definitely speaks to everything in my practice and everything that I tend to contemplate or really try to reach out to and work more heavily with this time of the year. And I don't know, this deck just really worked for me for how I view my practice. And I found that a lot of my readings were involved with that. I would essentially draw an oracle card every morning over coffee, and then I would use that as a jumping off point to draw some cards and just some journal about some thoughts. And most of them ended up being about my practice. It just was very beneficial to me. So that is definitely one that I'm going to keep exploring with this darker half of the year here. All right. The next one is the Soul Trees Oracle. I have both the Soul Trees Oracle and the Ascension deck. This is the Ascension deck. It's essentially like the second edition. There are some cards that are kind of similar, but not too many, really. And I love the artwork that goes into this deck. I think it's beautiful. There are some cards that are shadowy. There are some cards that are encouraging. And to me, it definitely has more of that darker half of the year vibe to it. Particularly this one. The Soul Trees, the first edition, definitely does too. But I found that this one did a little bit more. And maybe sometime I should do a comparison. But I adore trees. I have them tattooed on me. I'm going to get a full sleeve of nature tattooed on me. So, you know, this really spoke to me. And it was another kind of workhorse oracle deck as well for the darker half of the year last year and how I navigated all that. Oops. Just gonna put that in there. And then I always like to put the guidebooks on top. Usually. And then the next one is actually one that's new to my collection. The wonderful creators of the Wisdom of the Shadow were super kind, and I actually ended up winning this on Instagram, which was incredible to me because I had been very interested in this deck for quite some time. I had spoken to the creators a few times actually, and they're actually coming out with a new deck called Wisdom of the Divine Feminine. I believe it is still on Kickstarter, so please go check that out because this deck is incredible and the Wisdom of the Divine Feminine is going to be incredible as well. So this winter, or this darker half of the year, I really intend on going further into exploring shadow work and healing trauma and dealing with CPSD and where that's going to take me with my healing journey. And so I really felt that this deck would be a fantastic tool to navigate all of that, as well as another one that I'm going to show in here that's quite similar but has its own voice. So this is what my intentions are for this deck as I go into the darker half of the year. And I have worked with it before, so, before filming this video, and it was exactly as I hoped it would be, which was incredible and very rewarding, and also very thought-provoking, and um, quite a lot of depth to it, which is exactly as I was hoping. I love to keep this card in here. It's wonderful. That there. Kind of got them all stacked up against like the wall here on my desk. And the next one is the Oracle of Echoes. I've actually had this deck for a couple of years now as well. She did just come out with a second edition, which I do not have, and I would love to get it for the extra cards, but for the time being, I'm just going to continue to have this one because it's incredible and I love it. This deck is definitely one that you could use simultaneously both with healing or with shadow work, and it is definitely one that I used a lot last winter as I kind of went through some very difficult things and tried to navigate that. This is one of my favorite cards. I absolutely adore that one. Vulnerability, that's another favorite of mine. For me personally, the deck that made this, or the card that made me purchase this deck, is I know I've shown it several times. It's this one right here, the depression card, because when you have struggled with depression as I have, you know exactly how this feels, and I could not imagine, or I don't know honestly a better way to visually depict depression than this. This was very moving for me to see, and it also was very validating. So I have a kinship with this deck pretty much solely on this card, but it also has so much more to offer. So this is one that I do highly recommend, and it is another one that is really fantastic for navigating your shadows and anything that might come up in the darker half of the year or any time of the year, because I know plenty of people have this more in the lighter half of the year as well, because you know, it doesn't matter, but for me, I do tend to do this type of work along with the cycles of nature. That's just how I work. And then there's also on the other hand of that, technically I'm always doing this work, but I tend to dive deeper and handle going inward more with the darker half of the year. That's just how I work. And another one that I really hope will help me navigate that, is the Reclaim Oracle. I got this in a trade late spring, early summer, I believe. And this is another one that's really kind of similar, but again has its own voice to the Wisdom of the Shadow. I did a full walkthrough of this on my channel, and I really love this deck for everything that she has depicted when it comes to all of the spectrum of human emotion and I have found that I have definitely laid these out. I've laid several of these out and drawn cards around them, trying to navigate my feelings on something complicated or something that I'm trying to work through or something that I'm experiencing with others, and trying to navigate my relationships, my interpersonal relationships, because let's face it, those are really tricky, and we do our best sometimes, but sometimes we need an extra hand. And I really think that having something like this as a tool is remarkable. I actually brought this deck to my therapist and showed it to her, and she thought it was incredible. So that is also something that I think should speak to this deck for sure. Throw things everywhere because, you know. All right, the last one that I want to show you guys is the Liminal Spirits Oracle. Now, this is another one again that will be new to me working with it this year, this darker half of the year. This is one that I actually was not sure how I would feel about it, and I wasn't interested, mostly because the artwork that it did show didn't speak to me until I saw it on Michelle's channel. How many people bought this deck because of Dawn Michelle? Because I totally did. Or actually, no, I didn't buy this deck. A friend gave it to me. But still. They wanted me to do a tarot reading for them, and they wanted to pay for my services, to which I then turned down and got this deck for that. But I still feel really weird taking money for readings and stuff. But that's another topic for another time. So this deck, I think, really kind of also again speaks to the natural world and the cycles of nature. And I do feel that I will probably reach for this a lot through the darker half of the year and work with it in that sense. I do really like the guidebook as well. It is, oh, it's such a beautiful card. I am all for like mountains and oceans and stuff. Can you tell I'm from Washington State? Because I'm from Washington State. But yes, I really enjoyed the guidebook to this one as well. And I think that I'm gonna look forward to kind of diving deeper into this one for as we go into the darker half of the year. It just kind of has that vibe to it for me, and I don't have a whole lot to say on it right now just because I don't have the experiences of working with it with the darker half of the year, but it is definitely one that gives me that feeling. So I decided to throw it in here to kind of talk about how I intend on doing that. I've got a bow in it. I gotta fix that bow, but yeah. So that is the Liminal Spirits Oracle, and that's all I've got to show for you guys for decks that I am either like to work with for the darker half of the year or kind of intend on working with for the darker half of the year. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this little jaunt through a little bit of my deck collection and talking about this theme. And yeah, so what decks do you guys like to work with the darker half of the year? What decks are you looking forward to working with as you kind of navigate this time of the year? I know for a lot of people, such as myself, again, we tend to go more inward around this time of the year. And I have always found that tarot and oracle have helped me navigate that. It is like talking to my therapist when she's not available, and it's always been something that's been sort of a compass for me. So yeah, with that being said, thank you for watching, guys, and as always, blessed be.